Human nature is complex. Even if we do have inclinations toward violence, we also have inclination to empathy, to cooperation, to self-control. When people talk, they lay lines on each other, do a lot of role-playing, sidestep, shilly-shally, and engage in all manner of vagueness and innuendo. We do this and expect others to do it, yet at the same time we profess to long for the plain truth, for people to say what they mean, simple as that. Such hypocrisy is a human universal. If anything, PowerPoint, if used well, would ideally reflect the way we think. Cognitive psychology has shown that the mind best understands facts when they are woven into a conceptual fabric, such as a narrative, mental map, or intuitive theory. Disconnected facts in the mind are like unlinked pages on the web, they might as well not exist. Cognitive psychology tells us that the unaided human mind is vulnerable to many fallacies and illusions because of its reliance on its memory for vivid anecdotes rather than systematic statistics. I would argue that nothing gives life more purpose than the realization that every moment of consciousness is a precious and fragile gift. We are visual creatures. Visual things stay put, whereas sounds fade. I suspect music is auditory cheesecake, an exquisite confection crafted to tickle the sensitive spots of our mental faculties. Language is a window into human nature, but it is also a fistula, an open wound through which we're exposed to an infectious world. Semantics is about the relation of words to thoughts, but it also about the relation of words to other human concerns. Semantics is about the relation of words to reality, the way that speakers commit themselves to a shared understanding of the truth, and the way their thoughts are anchored to things and situations in the world. There has to be innate circuitry that does the learning, that creates the culture, that acquires the culture, and that responds to socialization. Academics lack perspective. In a debate on whether the world is round, they would argue, no, because it's an oblate spheroid. They suffer from the curse of knowledge, the inability to imagine what it's like not to know something that they know. I never outgrew my conversion to atheism at 13, but at various times was a serious cultural Jew. Morality is not just any old topic in psychology but close to our conception of the meaning of life. Moral goodness is what gives each of us the sense that we are worthy human beings. Personality and socialization aren't the same thing. One of my favorite kinds of movie is the American picaresque, in which the characters make their way across the country, learning about life against the gorgeous backdrops of that vast land. If the myth of pure evil is that evil is committed with the intention of causing harm and an absence of moral considerations, then it applies to very few acts of so-called pure evil, because most evildoers believe what they are doing is forgivable or justifiable. Consciousness turns out to consist of a maelstrom of events distributed across the brain. These events compete for attention, and as one process outshouts the others, the brain rationalizes the outcome after the fact and concocts the impression that a single self was in charge all along. Violence and religion have often gone together, but it's not a perfect correlation, and it doesn't have to be a permanent connection, because religions themselves change. Evolution is an indispensable component of any satisfying explanation of our psychology. Capitalism saved the world, and there is even a heretical theory now, moving up from the level of individuals to countries. Countries that trade more and have more open economies are less likely to fight wars and less likely to have genocides. I think that communism was a major force for violence for more than 100 years, because it was built into its ideology, that progress comes through class struggle, often violent. America had, for one thing, lived in anarchy until much more recently than Europe. We had the Wild West, where the cliché of the cowboy movies was the nearest sheriff is 90 miles away, and so you had to pack a gun and defend yourself. If crime is going down, you shouldn't be increasing resources for crime prevention. Or you should be taking note of what has worked and concentrate the crime prevention methods on policies that have a track record of success. Northeastern and most coastal states will vote for the candidate who is more closely aligned with international cooperation and engagement, secularism and science, gun control, individual freedom in culture and sexuality, and a greater role for the government in protecting the environment and ensuring economic equality. Astrology had an important role in the ancient world. You can't understand many things unless you know something about astrology, the plays of Shakespeare and so on. Probably Hobbes got it right when he said that a leviathan, a third party with a monopoly on the legitimate use of force in a territory, might be among the biggest violence reduction techniques ever invented. Being smarter gives you a tailwind throughout life. People who are more intelligent earn more, live longer, get divorced less, are less likely to get addicted to alcohol and tobacco, and their children live longer. The art of photography is all about directing the attention of the viewer. The strongest argument against totalitarianism may be a recognition of a universal human nature, that all humans have innate desires for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The doctrine of the blank slate is a totalitarian's dream. Everyone's pedigree merges into everyone else's pedigree, so if you go back far enough, everyone is related. I think a lot of moral debates are not over what is the basis of justice, but who gets a ticket to play in the game. For all the tribulations in our lives, for all the troubles that remain in the world, the decline of violence is an accomplishment that we can savor, and an impetus to cherish the forces of civilization and enlightenment that made it possible. The more you think about and interact with other people, the more you realize that it is untenable to privilege your interests over theirs. The human capacity for compassion is not a reflex that is triggered automatically by the presence of another living thing. Human evolution, at first, seems extraordinary. How could the process that gave rise to slugs and oak trees and fish produce a creature that can fly to the moon and invent the internet and cross the ocean in boats? Economic libertarians and Christian evangelicals, united by their common enemy, are strange bedfellows in today's Republican Party, just as the two Georges, the arch-conservative Wallace and the uber-liberal McGovern, found themselves in the same Democratic Party in 1972. I think this confusion leads intellectuals and artists themselves to believe that the elite arts and humanities are a kind of higher, exalted form of human endeavor. We know about every massacre that has taken place close to the present, but the ones in the distant past are like trees falling in the forest with no one to hear them. The stirrings of morality emerge early in childhood. Toddlers spontaneously offer toys and help to others and try to comfort people they see in distress. Statisticians tell us that people underestimate the sheer number of coincidences that are bound to happen in a world governed by chance. Societies that empower women are less violent in every way. People are under the impression that dictionaries legislate language. What a dictionary does is keep track of usages over time. So no, it's not all in the genes, but what isn't in the genes isn't in the family environment either. It can't be explained in terms of the overall personalities or the child-rearing practices of parents. As long as your ideology identifies the main source of the world's ills as a definable group, it opens the world up to genocide. I teach classes 28 weeks of the year, but the rest of the time I do research and write books. Anything that makes it easier to imagine trading places with someone else increases your moral consideration for that other person. One of the things that people complain about is loneliness, disconnectedness. If you live in a society where your life is rarely threatened and most of your relationships are more on an economic exchange basis, then this could leave people feeling less connected. By all measures, men are the more violent gender. Whenever you speak to someone, you are presuming the two of you have a certain degree of familiarity, which your words might alter. So every sentence has to do two things at once: convey a message and continue to negotiate that relationship. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.